Twelfth night. The last night at Castle Seltradit was always magical. That particular evening everyone dressed in their finest outfits and began to drift out onto the terrace where chairs were set along the railing overlooking the lawn on which the stage was set. It was perhaps 50 meters back from the terrace because there was a rather large crowd in attendance. Many people were seated below the terrace on ground level with the stage. I learned later that a large number of the people in attendance were pendulum recruits from all around the world receiving their introduction bonus. We made our way to a section just left of center where Magda, Cheesy and I sat with Errol and Lily. Behind us was Ian, Sandy, Vesna and Uncle Sandu. We all agreed to suggest someone we knew to play the part of one of the cast members in our own production as we usually did at these types of events. The Jacks were sitting on the right of center with the Baroness and General Anapov. The General's family was down in front of them surrounded by many members of the Tesla group that I recognized. I couldn't see Dr. Ben, the Swami or Florin and Dr. Roz until they showed up at the last minute to fill several seats that had been held for them. Undoubtedly they were on the threshold of a breakthrough. When were they not? The evening sky was clear and full of stars to brighten the stage on which the cast was about to bestow upon us their version of Twelfth Night, a romantic comedy by William Shakespeare. Whether he wrote the play or someone else did, they did so around 400 years ago. It always amazed me when the classics play out in the current day just as they had for hundreds of years. Certainly human nature has evolved. Then again, if the end of Kali Yuga was in sight, then perhaps human nature is devolving before being restored again. The setting for the play was Illyria, which was an ancient region of the Western Balkans along the eastern coast of the Adriatic Sea. We liked to cast the play from our friends and acquaintances before it started. Today, it would be modern-day Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Albania. I felt we needed to find a good part for Vesna Mandic. She would be the hometown girl there. Viola was truly the star of the play. She was a shipwrecked young woman who disguised herself as a page named Cesario. There was no doubt that Vesna had to play Viola and everyone accepted it without challenge. There would need to be serious doubt for a challenge. Magda asked, why did Viola need to disguise herself? Oh my dear, to assure her own protection in a strange world that wouldn't respect a young virgin maiden such as her. Vesna said as she fluttered her eyes at Magda and we all laughed. Who shall we have play Sebastian, Viola's twin brother? I asked. What's Sebastian's motivation? Sandy asked. Errol replied, Sebastian plays a role in complicating things and then plays a role in resolving things. After surviving the shipwreck, with the help of Antonio, Sebastian has no clear purpose or plan but decides he should be off to Count Orsino's court. Everyone Sebastian encounters mistakes him for Cesario, which leads Sebastian to wonder if the people are all freaking mad. Why do they think he's this Cesario? Magda asked. Because Cesario, whom he has not seen yet, is actually his twin sister Viola. Vesna stood for a bow and sat again, dressed as a boy to avoid being raped. Uncle Sandu stated matter-of-factly. Richard likes to play both sides against the middle. He would walk the balance bar to find out what was in it for him. Let him be Sebastian. Magda suggested. We all agreed and Cheesy added, if he could walk that balance bar. Who should play Duke Orsino, the Duke of Illyria? I asked. Let's see. He's in love with Olivia to the point where he can't live without her and sends the disguised Viola to Olivia who thinks to herself, who is this hot little number? Cheesy pontificates. Rich guy though. Duke-like in his demeanor. Then I turned to Errol and we both said, Carl. Viola had the hots for the Duke even if Oliva didn't, Vesna added. Sandy turned and looked at her, how could you and Carl? And we all laughed at his mock disgust. The Duke was a perfect gentleman, handsome, brave, courtly, virtuous, noble, wealthy, gracious, loyal and devoted. The perfect husband. All his pendulums in equilibrium, I added in Carl's defense. Olivia vowed not to take marriage proposals for 7 years as a result of her brother's death. The Duke sent Cesario to convince her otherwise. Which she did. The Countess was a lady of noble birth so we must choose appropriately. Ian said in defense of the fickle Olivia. I could see Cheesy wanting to say, Stephanie. But he bit his lip. Ian asked Magda if she would play Olivia simply because she had the noble bearing and irresistible charm and she replied, and out of all that I end up with Richard. I must be a great actress. Who is to play Malvolio? Vesna asked. Who is Malvolio? Lily asked Errol and he replied. Malvolio is Olivia's pompous steward, so I would be careful if suggesting present company. You hope, Cheesy piped in. He's a somber person who is suddenly made to think he has a chance as a suitor for Countess Olivia, so abandons all reason and behaves like a complete fool. That made me wonder how many people in this world live their lives in a state of deluded hope. False pendulums calculated by optimism. How about considering him from, who would we like to play a prank on? That could be a candidate for Malvolio, I suggested. Richard can't play all the parts. Cheesy interjected and we laughed. Errol tried again. In the book, Shakespeare refers to Malvolio as a Puritan. Someone of a stark nature with a cold personality. How about the Quaker Oats guy? And half of us fell out of chairs laughing. You didn't say it had to be a real person. He added in his own defense. I could see Lily agreed with him. The look on Errol's face was priceless. Maria was Olivia's gentlewoman and the designer of the Malvolio plan. Who do we think should play such a cunning sort? Ian asked. Krista. Lily suggested it and it was immediately accepted. I didn't realize that Lily knew Krista that well, but they had spent some time at Halls Falls together and found they had a lot in common. Sir Toby Belch was Countess Olivia's uncle. A sort of earthy, crude, fat, jolly fellow. He was as much a knight as Sir Malcolm was, but a rather corrupt individual by Sir Malcolm's standards. I guess not all knights of the crusade were good guys all of the time. His cohort, Sir Andrew Aguecheek, was, by comparison, a tall, long, thin, balding fellow as written by Shakespeare in his Yin to Sir Toby's Yan. His only reason for being, from Sir Toby's perspective, was to provide him with free money. Sir Andrew's motivation was to court Countess Olivia. An act fit for the Celtradet circus arena and a red nose. Maria had her rogueries and fit in with Sir Toby's view of the world. She was described as the youngest swan and as pretty as any in Illyria. Cheesy volunteered, that could only be Darla. And a flurry of programs hit him in the head, but we agreed if he agreed to play Sir Toby. I'm not sure if Cheesy knew Sir Toby married Maria at the end of the play. Lorenzo for Cheesy's sidekick. It must be. Errol proposed and it was another obvious choice. They had been partners in pranks for a decade. I'm not sure Lorenzo would be flattered by the shadow Sir Andrew cast. Marius was aware of what we were doing and just before the curtain went up he snuck over and suggested. I have the perfect suggestion for Festa, Olivia's jester, if you haven't cast him yet. He paused a moment until we were paying attention and then said, highly toxic, the poison voice with the vile tongue. Good old Clarence Dawkins. I said and we all laughed just as the crowd began to quiet down. The lights were lowered and changed their focus to the stage. The music began and the Duke appeared. We eventually get to the shipwreck of Richard and Vesna and follow it through to Vesna falling for Karl. I personally liked the scene where Vesna meets Magda, who falls in love with her thinking she is a man. We laughed when the poison voice encountered Richard and mistook him for Vesna. In the pursing action Cheesy and Lorenzo attacked Richard while the poison voice ran off to fetch Magda. He looked very cool in his Festa tights and jester hat. Just my luck. Magda exclaimed. Magda declared her love to a delighted Richard whom she mistook for Cesario, who was really Vesna. The web continued to weave. How can Richard not catch on? Sandy asked. Richard is confused and happy that a beautiful and wealthy woman would treat him so nicely. Magda is a wealthy countess with a house and staff. He passively goes along with the curious circumstances unfolding around him. He doesn't seem inclined to ask too many questions. Playing the middle against the ends, Ian volunteered. With Vesna now in love with Duke Orsino, it was truly a love triangle. Between scenes we had a quick opportunity to discuss the subplots. How do they trick Malvolio? Lily asked. They convince him that she is secretly in love with him by planting a love letter, written by Darla in Magda's handwriting. Ian said. I'm sure she did that more than once in high school. I had several dates I never knew I arranged. And we laughed, but it was probably true. Although Krista could have been equally guilty. The note tells the Quaker Oats guy to wear yellow stockings cross-gartered and colored. A fashion Magda hates. He's also to be rude to the rest of the servants while having a constant smile for Magda. Ian added. Like a big freakin' Cheshire cat. Magda complained. The Quaker Oats guy finds the letter and reacts, but Magda is shocked by the changes in him and agrees he must have an ergot infection. She leaves him to be cared for by his tormentors who lock him up in a dark chamber. The poison voice visits him to mock his insanity, both as himself and disguised as a priest. The poison voice as a priest. What a vision. Taking Richard for Vesna, Magda asks him to marry her, and they are secretly married in a church. Finally, when Magda and Richard appear in the presence of both Vesna and Karl, there is more wonder and confusion at their physical similarity. Vesna reveals her identity and is reunited with her twin brother. The play ends in a declaration of marriage between Karl and Vesna, and it's learned that Cheesy has married Darla. He told us. The Quaker Oats guy was pissed and swore revenge on his tormentors. As he stomped off, he was spewing oatmeal everywhere. He didn't have an ergot infection. His oats were clean, man, Cheesy said, defending the Quaker Oats guy. Cheesy and Errol exchanged fist pumps. We strolled around the grounds for at least an hour after the play, talking to other guests and discussing the play. As the night began to chill, we regrouped in the lounge for a nightcap. Everyone who didn't live there would be traveling on the morrow.